Oedipus, the curse of the house of Laius. Greetings, my friends. Today, I will tell you the story of Oedipus, one of the most famous tragedies in ancient Greek mythology, symbolizing the inevitability of fate and the tragic nature of human existence. This myth, which has been repeatedly interpreted by philosophers and playwrights, raises questions about the role of destiny, predestination, and free will. The main character, Oedipus, is forced to confront the harsh truth of his origins, making choices that only bring him closer to fulfilling the prophecy. Oedipus, the curse of the house of Laius. Laius, the king of Thebes, came from the noble family of Cadmus, the legendary founder of the city. The Cadmus family was known for its great achievements, but misfortune also seemed to follow them. Laius's fate was sealed even before his birth, as the house of Cadmus was doomed to a series of tragic events caused by the wrath of the gods. In his youth, Laius committed a grievous crime that led to a terrible curse. He was raised in the court of Pelops, the king of Pisa, who took him in after Laius was overthrown from the throne of Thebes. However, instead of showing gratitude, Laius committed a horrible act. He kidnapped and raped Chrysippus, the son of Pelops, and later killed him. This monstrous deed angered Pelops, who turned to the gods pleading for justice. The gods, enraged by the dishonor, placed a terrible curse on Laius. The curse declared that if Laius were to have a son, that son would eventually kill him and marry his mother. This fateful decree was foretold by the oracle of Delphi, the voice of Apollo himself. Despite his power and authority, Laius could not defy the will of the gods, and the fear of the prophecy tormented him. When Jocasta gave birth to a son, Laius, terrified of the prophecy, decided to rid himself of the child. To ensure that the baby would not survive, Laius ordered him to be left on Mount Cithaeron, where he would inevitably perish from the cold or become prey to wild animals. However, the shepherd tasked with carrying out this cruel command took pity on the helpless infant. Unable to leave the child to die, he gave him to a friend, a shepherd from Corinth. The Corinthian shepherd, in turn, took the baby to the palace of King Polybus of Corinth and his wife, Merope. The royal couple had been childless for a long time, and seeing the baby, they decided to raise him as their own. Thus, Oedipus grew up in Corinth, believing Polybus and Merope to be his real parents. He received a good education at court, learning military strategy, rhetoric, and philosophy, and acquiring all the skills necessary for a young aristocrat. However, one day, as a young man, he overheard a guest at a banquet jokingly suggest that he might not be the biological son of Polybus. These words struck Oedipus deeply. Filled with doubt, he decided to seek the truth. He traveled to the oracle of Delphi, hoping to learn about his true origins. But the priests of Apollo did not give him a direct answer. Instead, the oracle delivered a terrifying prophecy. He was destined to kill his father and marry his mother. Shaken and frantic with fear, Oedipus made the only choice he thought possible: to flee Corinth in order to avoid the dreadful fate. He did not know that Polybus and Merope were not his real parents, and his flight only brought him closer to fulfilling the prophecy. Leaving his home, Oedipus headed toward Thebes. At a crossroads, he encountered a chariot driven by an elderly man accompanied by attendants. The narrow road did not allow them to pass each other, and a dispute broke out about who should yield. The hot-headed young man, unaccustomed to being insulted, became furious when the elderly man ordered his driver to lash him with a whip. In a fit of rage, Oedipus attacked the old man and, in the heat of the struggle, killed him along with his attendants. Little did Oedipus know the old man he had killed was Laius, his biological father, and this random encounter on the road marked the first step toward fulfilling the terrible prophecy. Oedipus in Thebes. When Oedipus arrived at the walls of Thebes, he found the city in the grip of fear and despair. Its inhabitants were suffering from the invasion of a terrible monster, the Sphinx, who had taken residence on a rock along the road leading to the city. This mysterious creature, with the body of a lion, the head of a woman, and the wings of an eagle, posed a riddle to every passerby. Anyone who failed to answer correctly was killed by her claws. The Sphinx had already claimed the lives of many Thebans and foreigners, and no one could rid the city of this curse. In desperation, the people of Thebes turned to the gods, but the gods remained silent. Meanwhile, the rule of Thebes passed to Creon, the brother of the late Queen Jocasta. Creon declared that whoever could solve the riddle of the Sphinx and free the city would not only receive the gratitude of the citizens, but also the crown of Thebes and the hand of Jocasta, the widow of Laius. When Oedipus arrived in the city, he learned of the disaster and decided to try his luck. He boldly set out for the monster's lair, where the Sphinx posed her famous riddle. Who walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? Without hesitation, Oedipus gave the correct answer: man. He explained that in the morning of life, infancy, a person crawls on all 4s. In adulthood, they walk on 2 legs, and in old age, they lean on a staff as though using a 3rd leg. Hearing the correct answer, the Sphinx roared in rage. Legend has it that, realizing her defeat, the monster threw herself from the rock and perished. Thus, Thebes was saved from the deadly threat. The citizens of the city, struck by Oedipus's courage and wisdom, greeted him as a hero. In gratitude for freeing them from the monster, they fulfilled Creon's promise. Oedipus was proclaimed the new king of Thebes and married Jocasta. Thus, unknowingly, Oedipus married his own mother. The prophecy foretold many years earlier had come true. However, neither Oedipus nor Jocasta suspected their true kinship, and their years together seemed happy. They ruled Thebes justly, had children, and the city prospered under their reign. But fate was not about to let this terrible sin go unpunished. The shadow of the past began to grow darker for Oedipus, and the time was drawing near when the truth would be revealed. Revelation of the truth. Several years after Oedipus's triumphant ascension to the throne, a terrible disaster struck Thebes, a deadly plague. People were dying, crops were failing, and the priests made sacrifices to the gods. But the epidemic did not subside. Desperate, Oedipus sent his brother-in-law Creon to Delphi to learn the will of Apollo. The oracle gave a grim answer. Thebes was suffering because a wicked man, the killer of King Laius, was living in the city. To save the city, the murderer must be found and expelled. Determined to cleanse Thebes, Oedipus began an investigation. He turned to the blind prophet Tiresias, who was famous for his wisdom and ability to see the truth. However, Tiresias initially refused to speak, but when Oedipus insulted him and accused him of conspiracy, the prophet could not remain silent and threw these dreadful words in his face, "You are the one you seek. You are the killer of Laius." Oedipus, in a rage, rejected the accusations, blaming Tiresias and Creon for conspiring against him. But as events unfolded, the truth began to surface. Gradually, Oedipus gathered testimonies. One of Laius's old servants recalled that the king had been killed by a stranger at a crossroads. The shepherd, who had once saved the infant on Mount Cithaeron, admitted that he had given the child to the Corinthian king Polybus. Soon, news came of Polybus's death, and it was revealed that he was not Oedipus's real father. Piece by piece, all the details came together. Oedipus realized the horrifying truth. He had killed Laius, his father, and then unknowingly married his own mother, Jocasta. The tragedy of Oedipus. The realization of the truth was a fatal blow for Jocasta. Overcome with despair and madness, she locked herself in her chambers and took her own life. Oedipus, consumed by unbearable horror, burst into the room and saw her lifeless body. In an agony of suffering, he tore the golden brooches from her clothing and drove them into his own eyes. He blinded himself, cursing his fate and his inability to see the truth that had been before him all along, yet remained unnoticed. Blood streamed down his face as he cried out that while he was now blind in sight, he had finally gained true vision in his soul. His physical blindness became a symbol of spiritual awakening. Only now did he fully grasp the magnitude of his tragedy. The people of Thebes, shocked by what had transpired, saw it as divine punishment. They mourned, but they also understood that the prophecy had been fulfilled, and that Oedipus, as the bearer of an unholy crime, could not go unpunished. At Creon's insistence, Oedipus left Thebes and went into exile. Oedipus in Colonus. Wandering the roads of Greece, Oedipus was not alone. His devoted daughter, Antigone, accompanied him, sharing in the hardships of exile. She guided her blind father, fed him, and cared for him. After years of wandering, they arrived in Colonus, a sacred place near Athens, where the wise King Theseus ruled. Despite Oedipus's cursed past, Theseus offered him refuge and protection. In his final years, Oedipus reflected on fate and the will of the gods. He eventually found peace, realizing that his tragedy had been inevitable. When the time of his death came, something extraordinary happened. According to myth, Oedipus did not die an ordinary death. Instead, he vanished within the sacred groves of Colonus, and no one ever saw his body again. Some claimed that he was taken away by the gods, while others believed his soul merged with the earth itself. This mysterious departure hinted at his possible deification, as a symbol of suffering, repentance, and enlightenment. Thus ended the tragic fate of Oedipus, the man who tried to escape his destiny only to bring about its fulfillment through his very attempts to avoid it. Conclusion. The story of Oedipus is one of the most famous and tragic myths of ancient Greek culture. It goes beyond a simple tale of fate, becoming a profound philosophical reflection on destiny, human will, and self-knowledge. This myth raises many questions. Was Oedipus truly guilty if his actions were predestined? Or did he fulfill the prophecy precisely because he tried to avoid it. Is a person the master of their own fate, or is the idea of free will merely an illusion? For centuries, the story of Oedipus has inspired philosophers, writers, and playwrights. Sophocles, in his tragedy, Oedipus Rex, depicted him as a symbol of tragic ignorance, a man convinced of his knowledge, yet blind to the truth. In Nietzsche's philosophy, Oedipus represents humanity's struggle against cruel inevitability, while Sigmund Freud used his story to explain the deep workings of the human psyche, formulating the famous Oedipus complex. Even today, this myth remains relevant. It compels us to reflect on our own choices and their consequences. How free are we in our decisions? Where is the boundary between fate and self-determination? What do you think? Could Oedipus have escaped his destiny? Did he have any chance to change what was foretold? Share your thoughts in the comments.